Looks like we are live once again, although this is not precisely the Manny Wolf Show. This is a unique thing in the digital universe. This is a gift from myself and my good friend Marion Kane to you guys. We're going to talk about why charisma is important, why you don't have any, what you can do to get some, and how we can know the underpinnings, the structural pieces of what makes something as seemingly either you got it or you don't as charisma, something that every one of us can practice. My man, how are you, Marion?
No, I appreciate being here because, Manny, what's going on right now is that we're at a pivotal point in history. Everybody doesn't realize that everything shifted. It used to be one-on-one. You used to be able to get away with saying, hey, I do better in person.
Yeah.
Now, when you show up in person, you have a mask on, all right? So you have a whole different levels of barriers in front of you. So if you can't make that connection through the camera, if you can't grab people's souls, touch their hearts, you're not getting their wallets. This might even be very detrimental to individuals that would say, hey, I'm a book smart person. Now, if you can't communicate on camera, I read a study that showed that if you bomb on video, it is 12 times harder for you to recover than if you bombed in person.
Oh,
those ideas, that level of bombing sticks in a person's mind a lot heavier than face to face. So this is some heavy pivotal information. And I'm so happy you're bringing this to your people.
Yeah, this is one of those things that is sort of like in the world of marketing, in the world of sales, in the world of persuasion, in the world of coaching, we have the stuff that everybody gives away and everybody shares and everybody knows. And then there's that certain hard to pinpoint kind of like, I feel like I'm doing everything he's doing or she's doing, but my results aren't the same. And in marketing, it comes down to things like you probably didn't do the unsexy work of research. Now, but there's a in the sort of cult of personality,
right?
It's like you can fake your way through mimicking the people you look up to or the people that seem to be doing what you want to do, and not feeling the same results, not experiencing the same results. Charisma, likability, that sort of rock star presence is one of those things that the ones who have it don't usually talk about it.
Never.
And they don't really want to teach you.
You want to know the reason why they're not teaching you?
Yeah.
It's because A, they don't think you deserve it. They know how powerful it is. Yeah. They know how powerful it is. And 3, they've spent the money, the time, the hard work to develop it. You understand what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Quote unquote naturals. You don't know how many people come to me that are naturals that they just want to harness it because everyone has had that time in their life, Manny, where they were on.
Yeah.
Everyone's had that meeting. Everyone's had that date. Everyone's had that dinner party where they were on. Yeah. And they keep chasing that it factor. What I do and what you do also is we contextualize it down and we take the randomness out of those interactions and we deliver it to individuals so it becomes a superpower they can turn on and turn off at any time. That's power.
Yeah. Now, do you think that is it a X plus Y plus Z equals desired outcome formula, or is it more intangible than that?
It's an algorithm, but it's an algorithm. It's a formula that's unique to each individual. So what a lot of times people want a formula that is universal, and that is the problem. What you have to find out is you have to find out your secret sauce. You have to find out your formula. My formula is different from Manny Wolf's formula.
Yeah.
Me and you we're actually polar opposites. So that's the reason why I love doing these interactions because together
Yeah.
That's the explosion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. The opposites don't attack, they attract.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the whole polarity and stuff that you're looking for. And that's the reason why I really love discussing, breaking down the greats, because there's a lot of even things that, and I'm not saying this, I always preface this anytime I give criticism. I'm going to criticize somebody. I will train you and help you for free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my main thing is, like, if I'm going to sit here, I'm going to say something about you. I say, hey, try this or do this. I'm going to put your face up there and I'm going to give you a criticism. I'm going to sit there and be like, hey, all the information I have, you can give it or you can take it, but I will help implement these things for you for free. So if any of these folks, Oprah wants to contact us, Eric Thomas wants to contact us, The Rock, we are more than happy to help.
That's right.
More than happy to give them that support. But there's a lot of things that they're doing right, but I'm going to tell you honestly, there's things that they can improve on too.
Sure. Absolutely. So let's lay out the sort of game plan for today, the framework. We've picked, I believe, 5.
Yes, sir.
We've picked 5 unarguably charismatic people. And what we're going to do today is we're going to dissect what makes each of them charismatic. Hopefully, we're going to show you through this process how it is, just like Marion said, it's an algorithm, but it's unique to each person. So what works for me doesn't necessarily, you shouldn't necessarily try to emulate if you're not sort of the same, if you don't start with the same ingredients I do.
Right.
Right? Who's first on our list? I can't wait to do this.
Let's go with Steve Jobs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The reason why I want to start with Steve Jobs is that his personality type is the most popular from everyone out there in society. More of an analytical, logical, nurturing type individual who, if you put him on stage, if you chose him out of 1,000 people, you would not choose him to be on stage and also create $1 billion company that changes the course of the world. That's the reason why Steve Jobs is the ultimate paradox, I think, in terms of charisma.
I think so too.
Excellence. That's my opinion. What do you think, Manny?
Well, I agree with you, but I also think he's a good example because he was notoriously difficult and unlikable. And I mean,
all right.
This is not what we think of traditionally as a charismatic person.
Right.
He was, if the biographies and the urban legends are true, he was a bit of a bastard.
Right.
But get him on stage, right? Or put him in an ad or an interview, and you really can't take your eyes off of him. And it's interesting because in his case, which I don't think we can say this about any of the other people we've picked, part of the reason he's so compelling to us is because of the way he changed our lives.
Yeah.
The overall context he created, where you can't think about Steve Jobs without thinking about the way that your interactions with people around the world have changed. How he gave you a tool that a 5-year-old can figure out with no instructions. That is one of the most sophisticated tools on the planet, the iPad and the iPhone, right? And so there's the contribution aspect. Then there's the aspect of his on-camera presence. And that's what I really want to talk about with you. Do you remember when Steve Jobs was sort of, I guess, younger, refining himself?
Right.
He didn't have the same charisma, the same presence that he ultimately wound up creating for himself. So let's start with this. What do you see as the key components of what made him very, very compelling, very charismatic?
Showmanship. I think one of the greatest things is that he was a master of body language. Mm-hmm. His movement was very not only controlled, it was measured, but what people don't understand, it was planned.
Yes.
What you have to do, if you go back and you look at all of his keynotes, and I reviewed them real quick before our presentation, you can tell he planned his body language movements. Mm-hmm. He started with a lot of open gestures. He'd hold that phone up. he'd bring it out in his body. He'd reach out to individuals. When you make more body language, a lot of us, when you make body language, I mean, and when you have to make an effect, even on camera, you chicken wing.
Yeah.
Even when you're in public, you pretend like you're confined to this same box we have here on camera, right? Then you also think that your gestures are confined to the 45-degree angle you keep your hands at. No, you can bring them out. Steve Jobs would bring him out. He'd have that camera held up high, up above his head. He would move. A lot of people think when you're on stage, they can look at the way Steve Jobs would move. He would move and then land, and he would not ever be making a major point while he was on the move.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that.
A lot of people, when they're moving, they think they're doing stand-up comedy, like Rock or Kevin Hart, and they're pacing up and down the stage, and they just do it because. And I've asked so many of my clients, like, "Why are you doing it?" They're like, "Oh, that's what I thought I should do." You have to understand that when the greats are doing it, they are doing it with a purpose. They're moving because they have such a large crowd. They want to reach this individual, touch them, move, reach, touch that person. However, when they stop, they're stopping. They land their point on an individual. What do you think, Manny?
Oh, I feel like somebody has just come along and validated what I've been trying to teach for 5 years. That is incredibly esoteric for people. It's incredibly hard for people to make that connection between what you're saying and doing and your body language. Specifically, the idea that when you're making a point, you stop moving. What I would always tell people, as speakers in particular, is when you make a point, you have to use your body as an exclamation point.
Yes.
Stop. Pick one segment of the audience. We'll say we're on stage for this example.
Right.
You pick one segment of the audience. You pick one person in that segment. You make eye contact with them, and you deliver that point. Both feet on the ground.
Yep.
Yeah. So I agree with you completely. And I think I don't want to go too far into this because it's just a professional observation, but the beauty of all the planning that went into the product launch reveals or the product reveals for Apple and how simple and utterly just off the cuff it looked.
Right.
Right. That's the power of when you assiduously strip away all the distracting information from the body, all the distracting information from the words, and all the distracting information from the background. You can have this moment that looks breathlessly simple. And yet, as you and I know, Steve Jobs invested thousands of dollars into learning vaudevillian stage presence.
Yes.
You can look and chart his progress and see when he started to wear the black turtleneck.
Right.
Cost him thousands of dollars to learn that.
And let's talk about the black turtleneck because I had that written down real quick.
Yeah.
Come back. No, but real quick, let's shelve the black turtleneck for 1 second.
Yeah.
But I do want to give people a pro tip. If you land on, you got to get the pro tips. And
you got to get the pro tips.
Give them the pro tip. Pretty much the pro tip is you have to figure out the pattern that you're going to move. And this requires you, if you have to plan to be big. You have to plan to go viral, right? Yeah. You cannot leave it for chance. So if you do have that opportunity to kill it up on stage, right? You have to go to the place the night before or a week before.
Yeah.
The reason being is you need to get on the stage and you need to understand not only the dynamics of where the lights are, but how you're going to be able to move across that stage. If it's a smaller venue and it's more kind of like being out, you want to move like a clock. Meaning you go to the center, you go out to 2 o'clock, come back to the center. Go out to 10 o'clock, come back to the center. You understand what I mean? So it's like you're moving and people don't even know you're moving. You're taking a step forward, but you're taking it back at an angle to kind of get to the center. But then you're coming in, you want to move like that. If it's a longer stage, you want to move in boxes. But you have to break the audience up into a segment, just like you were saying. When you start to get out there, here's the key thing. And this is the reason why you have to have teachers that have actually done it. I've been in front of 40,000. You've been in front of thousands, right? You know, because you just said it. When you go out there, you could have your thing, you could have your speech nailed, your body language nailed. But if you get out there and you start scanning,
yeah,
you're done.
Yeah.
That one thing, you start scanning, like you don't focus on one person.
Yeah.
If you have 20,000 people out there, you find one person, you dominate, you win that one person.
Yeah.
Then you move to the next.
Yeah,
and then
that's
you
right.
dominate, and you win that one person. And what you do is you create this process. It's called entrainment, right? What it does is it's like a wave. You get that one person, now you have two people. Then you get that two people. Those two people are working with you to get the rest of the crowd.
That's right.
Next thing you know, boom, everybody's in the palm of your hand.
Right.
But instead of going for thousands at once, you got to start with just one.
I would argue or suggest or add to that, you stay with just one at a time. No matter the size of the audience. What I would say to do is let's say you've got 1,000 people in the audience.
Okay.
Pick 5 of them and just continually vacillate back and forth between slow, deliberate eye contact with, in any pattern you want with the 5 of them. The whole audience will feel connected. This is one thing that speakers struggle with and don't understand. Presenters, if you make eye contact and real connection, and you know when real connection is made, there's no question. And when you do that, the whole area feels connected to you, right? That's something that's something that Steve Jobs clearly learned, whether he put different language on it or not. He clearly learned that later on in his presentation career, because that's exactly what he did.
Yes.
You know, he had a way of, you could watch him on camera and it felt like he was talking to just you.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's mastery of that idea. So before we...
and real quick, I have to make a confession too.
Yeah.
You hit the nail right on the head. That pretty much you have about a couple of people. It doesn't matter if you have 100 or you have 10,000, right? You just focus on individuals. You have a couple. Yeah. Me personally, I get there ahead of time and I have plants in the audience. My mama sits over there. My girl sits over there. My buddy sits back there. My grandmother sits over there. Because what happens is you get that familiarity. You get that feeling.
Yeah.
They start to rock with you.
Yeah.
They start to feel with you. You feed off that energy. And then all you need to do is just like a jet. You just have to be able to get that lift off. That's the hardest part. Once you lift off, you're in a space, it's game over. But you have to have the planning. Yeah. But back to Steve.
Yeah. So let's get back to Steve. What do you think? Last time we did one of these, we talked a little bit about the idea that from the perspective, so there are 2 people whose work on charisma I really, really admire. Olivia Fox-Cabane and I'm going to forget his name on camera. How embarrassing. The guy who wrote Power Cues, Nick, sorry, I can't remember your last name at the moment. Anyway, Olivia Fox-Cabane tends to break charisma down as she says it's the ability to focus completely on what's in front of you. And it's the seeming juxtaposition of 2 opposite traits. And we can most easily, I think, reference Tony Robbins here for that: strength and compassion.
Right.
So biologically, when we see someone like Tony Robbins, our first question in our lizard brain is he friend or foe? And can I kill him or will he kill me? Right. And it's so funny because this is still operating inside of us even today. So given that lens, what do you think Steve Jobs was able to embody that made him so compelling?
It's a great question. What I think what he did was that he was able to he made nerds cool.
He did do that.
Pretty much.
He did do that.
Yeah. He made nerds cool.
Yeah.
So he had his glasses, he wore his mock turtleneck. You knew what he was going to come out with. You knew he wasn't trying to blow you away in terms of his sartorial style, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, he told stories.
Yeah.
And his storytelling, without telling you he was cool, he told you he was cool. Through his storytelling, without saying that he was a genius, that he was a billionaire, and that this was going to change, or he told stories.
Yeah.
That showed that. So it's like basically, I remember one time during one of his speeches, he talked about when he was on his smartphone, this girl started checking him out, right? So just through that little small story, it's showing, not only is this smartphone, the word smartphone also shows that, hey, you're smart, right? Yeah. It also is going to make your life better. You're going to have more organization. You're going to make more money, but it's also going to do well with the girls too.
Right. Yeah.
All the power of storytelling. Quick story.
Yeah. I think that Jobs really positioned himself well as a visionary who was going to change our lives for the better. That was kind of his thing.
Right.
Where I would not call Tony Robbins a visionary.
What would you call him?
Well, I would say he is more, his type of appeal is more about compassion. It's more about, he's like a healer almost. He's if it was tribal, I'd say the closest thing we could ascribe to him would be like shaman or the medicine man. Right. So he cares about us deeply. That's his charisma. And the thing that he really works well is that he's strong enough to get the work done.
Right.
Jobs was the avatar of a bold new future.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that what we can take away from Jobs is that he played to his strengths, his savage intelligence, his vision for the future. And this is something for you guys and girls out there to really pay attention to. Jobs understood his shortcomings. He understood where he had deficit. And so you'll never see him trying to act like a playboy or a strong man or any of those things. You never see him be as cavalier as Elon Musk.
Right.
Right. He knew it wasn't his, that's not what he could sell. And so in that, and then Steve Jobs also, this is a bit of a slippery slope here for just the sort of entrepreneur on the street who might be watching this saying, yeah, help me to get more charismatic. Steve Jobs was in a position where he could spend dozens of hours and tens of thousands of dollars to refine himself. Now, most of you may not be able to do that at the level he did, because again, he studied vaudeville. He studied stage presentation. He studied all of these very, very subtle things that are very powerful and important. And most of us may not be in that position. But I think the sort of boots on the ground version of that is to know what you are not. And again, I'll borrow on Tony Robbins. So many people in my world, as I'm certain in yours, because our worlds overlap, they really try to be Grant Cardone or Tony Robbins or Gary Vee or whomever else, when it's clear that's not your DNA. Right? It's clear that's not your personality. And so instead of looking like a strong, charismatic presence, you look like a get along, go along guy.
And the key thing about it is that you have to understand that you have your own, you have your own secret sauce.
That's right. Your algorithm.
But it's something that continues to have to be developed. But when you look at individuals, what's really important about when you're studying the GOATs, the greatest of all time in terms of speaking, they continuously develop and they evolve. But what's interesting is that when you watch a presentation from Steve Jobs, right, you will subconsciously, when you go into your next presentation, the next time you have a conversation, you're going to subconsciously emulate his qualities. You're going to take this persona on as your own.
Yeah.
to a degree, right? We all do, and that makes us feel powerful. We actually put on that cloak. So it's a different level when I can talk to a Professor Manny Wolf, like yourself, and you can understand. And so no longer it's an unconscious competence. You have a conscious competence.
Right.
That's the key thing about charisma. I sometimes you don't know how many people told me not to put it in my copy, not to put charisma in my stuff, because you know the reason people can't understand it. It's so esoteric. They can't explain it. They can't put a grasp on it.
Yeah.
But you have to understand how powerful that is. It's the difference. Steve Jobs' eye contact.
Yeah.
His eye contact is amazing. And something that I really want folks to land on that you had talked about previously, and we had talked about previously before. When you're up in front of, you're giving a presentation, even right now on Zoom, when you're talking, the eyes are the mirrors to the soul.
Yeah.
It's literally it's an innate quality that people pick up in terms of friend or foe.
Absolutely.
Lover or enemy.
Yeah.
You can't make the eye contact, and I'm not talking about creepy eye contact. I'm talking about nice, warm, connecting eye contact. And there's a secret to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people, you have to make the decision when you go on stage. You have to make the decision when you go in front of an audience. Are you going to be in control, or are you going to be a fan? Right? The reason why I say that is this is what a fan does. If you're a fan of somebody, you meet them, you are like, you staring like this. Your eyes don't close. And a lot of people get good eye contact. I made eye contact because I read it in a book.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in reality, you're just a fan. That's how people act when and they don't know why they don't feel that connection, but they see you on a lower level. All this is about power dynamics. I'm sorry. This stuff is all about power dynamics, whether you want to accept it or not. Yeah. And if you don't want to accept it, you're just doing yourself a disservice. The secret is that you have to do a switch. You have to figure out at what level of control you want. But natural, solid body eye contact is an 80-20 split. That means you're staying locked in for about 80% of the time. 20% of the time, you can look off, grab your notes. Right. You can break it.
Yeah.
But when you're landing your power points, that's when you land your power points. Yeah. You land your power points looking at your notes or looking at it doesn't have the same effect.
Right.
What do you think, Manny?
We see this in politicians all the time when they're delivering speeches that are being delivered from notes rather than from the teleprompter.
Oh, right.
They'll read like this for the less important parts, but every time an important part comes up, they look up from the notes and they look right at you in the audience.
Right.
This stuff is, you're absolutely right. It's primal dynamics. 100%. It's
evolutionary psychology.
It's alpha energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you sort of started to say, I'm sorry, but that's what it is, because I can relate to that. People don't seem to want to hear that. We want to think, I don't know what we want to think, but we don't want to think that there's a dominant energy in every interaction.
Right.
It's as if that's a bad thing.
No, we just want to believe that the playing field is level. We want to believe that everyone is operating from the same rules.
Yeah.
And everything is fair. Yeah. And it's not. What's going on is that there are folks out there that are speaking a completely different language and they're getting a completely different result.
Yeah.
And so you have to make that choice, whether you want to just stay in the dark or whether you want to commit yourself to not just self-improvement, but just learning. And a lot of these things, you don't even need to know and employ them yourself. You just need to know what people are doing. A lot of times I just like what we're doing right now, dissecting people. We just know what they're doing. We're like, everyone else, it's like a magic trick. They're watching the cups move, but we're watching the hands.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the key thing. And so with Steve Jobs, what he would always do when he was landing his heavy point, and he was very concise with his taglines, right? That's just another thing with charisma. A lot of people think, and this is a problem I have, and that's not a problem you'll have with your personality type, but my personality type, I talk too much, right? I have to tell myself to be more concise.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs always was able to plant in your mind a concise thought and theme.
A tagline, basically.
A tagline.
Yeah.
So what happens, even if you're talking to an individual one-on-one, even if you're doing a sales or you're getting in front of a group, people have to know what your theme is. They have to know who you are, what you're about, and they should be able to sum it up in 7 words.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move to whoever is next on our list.
Oprah.
Oprah. Okay. Now, let's caveat this because of all the crazy conspiracy theories flying around the internet right now.
What do you mean? What's going on?
Well, everyone in Hollywood, depending on who you are, everyone in Hollywood is now suddenly a horrible person and a pedophile, and they're part of some evil cabal.
Okay.
So let's just say this is just an analysis of charisma.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go, guys. There's your ticket to watch. Your permission to not get revved up. If we see in the comments some stupid stuff about bad people, look, this is just us trying to help you understand charisma. So just back the fuck up.
Yeah. What's hilarious is that, I'm not as you have to. You can't really get wrapped up into. Everybody has faults, and that's one of the things that I'm glad we're talking about. Oprah is that Oprah has created this parasocial relationship where we feel that these individuals are our friends.
Yeah,
we feel that these individuals are our family. So when we learn other things about them, we learn about their proclivities. We learn about their habits and their foibles and their mistakes. The reason why we have such a visceral response is because we accepted these people not just into our homes, but into our hearts. That's what makes Oprah so powerful. I'm so happy that you brought that out, because the comments that people are going to drop, they're dropping because they're angry. The person told me that they were this, and they're actually this, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Back to Olivia Fox-Cabane briefly, in the beginning of her book, and I think central to everything she teaches, she really likes to stress that this is serious, powerful stuff. And we're not here, you and I, to say true or false to any allegations about anyone in Hollywood, but it does make a very potent point when you see how much people feel, how strong they feel when they hear these things that force them to look at these people they've decided they love in a different light. That's the power of charisma. Don't take this stuff lightly, because the thing that's sitting there obvious that nobody's saying is Hitler was charismatic.
Right.
This shit is no joke.
Yeah. It's
no joke.
Very charismatic. So you have the choice of whether you're going to use it for good or for evil.
Right. Yeah. It's not it doesn't have an inherently good bias to it.
Right. Number one PR tip and speech tip, don't quote Hitler.
Yeah. Okay. It's number 1 and 2.
That's actually moved to the top of my list. Any Hitler quotes or anything like that. Yeah.
Sure.
Want to shy away from. It kind of detracts from your message. But this is one thing I want to break down. I want you to break down. How do you make someone feel?
Yeah.
Like they're not only that they're a family member, that they have that deep, innate level of connection that Oprah is able to do. How are they able to do it? So in Oprah's case, it's a couple of main things. Her hero's journey is well known. And the hero's journey is a powerful, just a massive tool in creating that bond with people that you may never meet in real life. Right.
we are wired somehow to connect with the underdog.
Yes, yes.
I mean, you know, you don't need a raft of scientific research to accept that one.
Right.
We love underdogs. And she has a wild underdog story, you know, and then she's reached the top of the top of the top. So what is Oprah's real sort of strength? She is a loving mother figure. You know, the thing about Oprah that from an essence standpoint is she's maternal. For someone who has no kids, she's incredibly maternal, right? She's like the whole world is her kids or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it really lends itself to why women in particular just love her. She's a symbol. She's a human being that is a brand for everything these women aspire to be, and quite possibly on some level realize that they're not.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of things can happen there. You see her give the whole audience a car. You see her buy houses for people that were on welfare. You see her do all these amazing things. And it becomes not a cautionary tale, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like an aspirational tale.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So she's an aspirational tale. She came from poverty, abuse. She came from all of these things. And now she's buying the whole studio audience cars, you know? So at an essence level, I think her charisma superpower is simply that she seems incredibly maternal. Then we can layer on top of that some of the techniques, because they're there for sure. So now let me put it back on you and say, what techniques of showing up, of being present, of how she behaves, do you feel that she's employing very well?
Number one thing, appropriate self-disclosure. Throughout her television career, she's handled touchy subjects like back in the 80s, the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
Handled, but she also will bring celebrities onto her show and make them feel at home. But at the same time, she has no problem talking about her own upbringing, her own issues with sexual abuse, failed relationships, the like. Yeah. She has been able to display an appropriate level of self-disclosure. And I've found that that's something that's a very powerful tool. Once you disclose, it just kind of lets people drop their shoulders a little bit.
Yeah.
In a little bit more, because they start to understand you and connect with you because you've gone first. Okay?
Yeah.
So she's gone first. People have seen that, okay, not only has she's risen up, but she's this person, but they more identify with who she was. And as you said, they can now aspire that she's made it, I can make it too.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Right? Second of all, here's a pro tip though. Here's a pro tip.
Yeah.
When you're telling a story of your life, a lot of people love to tell their story. Some coaches and different people tell them people don't care about you. That's a lie. People care about you. Okay. I've read that so many times lately. It's driving me insane.
So have I.
Nobody cares about. They do care about you.
They absolutely do.
That's kind of like the person that wants to steal your copy and hack your funnel. They yada 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 to your piece because they're just trying to steal your stuff. But the average person, they want to know who you are because they're inviting you into their home. Mm-hmm. They're investing their hard-earned money on you. Yeah. There's a lot of people that can give your service and your ability, but they want to know who you are. But here's the pro tip. When you're telling your story, how you've evolved, just like you said, the hero's journey, you got to do a double dip. Everybody's expecting the first dip of when you failed. Mm-hmm. Right? So you hit that point of when you failed, and then you turn around, this is how I came up. But the charismatic way, the charisma way, is you got to dip down again because it's happening. We all started that chart up, and then boom, we get slapped again with life.
Right.
And then we make it back up again. It just makes the story a lot more compelling. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that we sense duplicity in the idea that somebody hit bottom once and then just rocketed to the top.
Right.
Yeah. I think that, and plus we do the world a disservice if we pretend that's the case.
Right.
Because that way, when you trust us and follow our whatever, and then you find yourself struggling on your way up, it strains our credibility.
Right.
So no, I think that's very true. I want to talk specifically about appropriate disclosure, though. I think that's a really important one, and I don't hear anyone even talking about it, much less talking about how to do it right.
Right.
So give me an example of what appropriate disclosure would be in a one-to-many kind of setting.
It has to be. I'm at a loss for words today, and that happens all the time. You gotta keep pushing through it, but it has to be congruent to your surroundings, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain level of self-disclosure you make when you're in a crowd full of adults, and if you're with children, okay, or if you're in a mixed crowd,
right?
You know, it is a lot of different levels, and some things need to be left out.
Yeah,
but you have to understand your goal is to be polarizing, so you have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Don't disclose it and then turn around, be upset in the comments. You're sitting there, you're putting yourself out there because you're going to be polarized, because that's what it's you're breaking social norms and mores.
Yeah.
That you keep these things inside. So the key thing about it is what I would always do is A, make sure appropriate to your surroundings, right? B, whatever you say, you own it. That's the number one thing. If you're gonna say it, you're gonna make some type of disclosure, something that happened about you in the past, how you feel. You have to be thinking about what's the worst case scenario, and you have to understand now in 2020, this is going to be visible in 2120.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be this is gonna stay around forever for your kids to see, your grandkids to see, everyone to see. You know, lately Kanye West got on Twitter, said, "Hey, I've been trying to divorce this woman for 2 years." Okay, whether that was true or not true, you know, it's like that's very hard to come back from.
Yeah,
when you're talking about that in public, but it's also you have to understand if you're going to have a level of self-disclosure, it has to be about you. You have to, sometimes people make a level of self-disclosure and they forget that there's other people connected to this story as well. They're not ready to make that leap.
Yeah. So I think if we were to really kind of sum that up, it would be vulnerability is charismatic.
Yes.
But don't be that guy or that girl who's just rolling over publicly and showing their soft white underbelly all the time. Don't be the person who either because they don't know better or even worse, deliberately seeks sympathy versus, and so people get confused here. The idea is to create empathy by sharing your vulnerabilities. The low value, low grade, sort of cheap version of that is to seek sympathy by always talking about how bad you had it. Right?
And Manny, what you just said, that right there was gold, fire. I couldn't have explained it better myself. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I had to stop you. That was so well said.
Oh, thank you. I see this all the time in people who want to craft their signature speech, their signature talk, their core story functions also as your personal brand identity. The difference between speaking the truth, even if it doesn't, even if it's vulnerable and revealing for you, and kind of slipping into that, you should trust me because I had it so hard. It's apparently a fine line for people. And I'm sure you've seen this before on stage when somebody, instead of being transparent and creating empathy, they seek sympathy, right? They tell a sad story. And what happens is you leave the audience there unless you're a master of bringing them back out of it. And then you wonder why you don't get the response you're after. Well, it's because you just made everybody depressed.
Yes. Yes. And this is something that I have to continuously tell my clients. If you bring them there, you got to bring them out.
Right.
Because it's not only will it kill the momentum, but they will start to associate you with the negativity.
The weakness.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Empathy and empathy, that right there needs to be your thought process before you disclose something.
Yep.
Empathy is just, I feel sorry for this individual.
Yeah.
At that point, you're not in a power position. When
exactly.
Everyone in that audience is giving you permission to put you in the palm of their hands.
Now we're talking.
Right?
Yeah.
So at that point, they're just like, they start to question whether they should give you that power.
Yeah.
However, the difference with empathy, the best definition I've ever heard for empathy is feeling your pain in my heart.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to make sure when you're disclosing and you're making people connect with you, that they're feeling the feelings that you feel, but they're feeling it in their heart.
Yeah.
As opposed to you wanting them to, quote unquote, like you, you're bringing them there. And that's all a part of your storytelling in terms of building up that emotion. Yeah. So sometimes when you're doing disclosure, it might be a lot more powerful to do the backdoor approach. Maybe start your story off or your experience in a third person. Then at the end, and say, that was me.
Yeah. But now I feel like I got to be like Flava Flav, like, you're losing them, Chuck. You're losing them, Chuck. They can't handle it.
I'm just saying, if we're gonna talk, man, I'm gonna give it to you real. Like,
no, you're right, man.
It's just sometimes if our listeners, they're gonna do it. I don't want to start them off with training wheels. Like, let's start on a high level, the high level stuff that really sticks, because these are the things that people that need, and that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because when you're able to disclose these things about yourself, you're able to make the people feel and have that empathy.
Yeah.
The reason why it's charismatic is because you're wide open. You're like, you can hit me, you can come at me, I can handle it.
Yeah.
And that's powerful and that's attractive.
It's incredibly attractive. And it's like its ugly stepsister is seeking sympathy, right? Because it's like cloying and it's like groveling. Here's the gold nugget on this. And this is what Oprah does, by the way, listening and viewing audience. This is what Oprah does very well. She never loses her poise, her power, as she shares the stuff that should, that we read that and we go, that should have decimated you.
Yes.
But she's clearly there, powerful, strong, centered. That's the secret. To take this over to the world of speaking and presenting, this is what I tell people. You cannot think about going back into the pain and the suffering when you were victimized. See, one of the things that's universal in life is we've all been victimized. That doesn't make you a victim, though. And there's the twist. Victim is a choice. Victimization happens. I mean, it's guaranteed to at least happen during childhood when you don't have autonomy, right? When you're under the control and influence of adults, something's going to happen.
Right.
Happens to all of us. It's a rite of passage. And I'm not saying that's okay. This is not a political or moral kind of perspective.
Understood.
But here's the thing. That was more for them. I know you're tracking this. When you are now, you see me on stage, I look like a fucking brand new shiny railroad spike. I'm not playing around. You know what I mean? I'm a piece of iron up there. You look at me and there's no question that I've got this under control.
Definitely.
So from that perspective, that power position, if you will, I can then talk about what I experienced in the past, but I'm always in an empowered emotional state. So whether that's thinking back on those moments with anger, with indignation, with self-righteous restraint, that will guide people through your deepest, darkest, most desperate moments, and they'll know you have them the whole time. And that's how you create empathy and not sympathy. If you lose that position, which I have seen so many times, and you start to relitigate and relive those feelings, you run the very real risk of leaving whoever's paying attention to what you're saying in the mud.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And this even goes back to exactly what you said about Steve Jobs in terms of having the polarity in the opposites.
Yeah.
You know, the visionary, the rich nerd, all the different things. Is that when you're telling a story about yourself and you're doing a measure of self-disclosure.
Yeah.
I usually, when I'm training an individual, this is something a lot of people want to work on this story at the beginning, but you have to understand it's something that's so powerful, so important. You have to have some other basic things inside to bring it to life. Here's the point of what I was saying about the opposites. So you can't, and when you're talking about something that's a very painful, very emotional time in your life, your body language has to be on point.
Yeah.
You have to correspond it with powerful body language, which Oprah does.
Absolutely.
One thing that's amazing about Oprah is that Oprah can be the motherly person. She can use slang, be the person from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
She can represent herself presidential in front of everyone. But at the same time, when she's talking and she's disclosing and she's talking about her life, her speech slows down.
Yeah.
She leans in.
Yep.
She hits you with power pauses. Because if you're going to sit there and tell somebody you were raped, you were abused, your wife was cheating on you, you walked in on her and her lover, you can't do it really fast. You can't sit there and you can't be you can't have a psychotic posture about it. And I got there and she cheated. At that point, you go from someone that's on stage that is telling a story with a purpose to someone that they feel sorry for. You don't go from someone they want as an ally. You go to entertainment. And so that's the distinction you want to make, whether you want to be ally or whether you want to be entertainment. Whether you want to teach or you want to play. So that's the power and the reason why it's coming in. But one thing I want to do before we move on, and we forgot to do this with Steve Jobs, how would you improve Oprah? How would you improve the billionaire that she's had the coaches, but she has not had Manny Wu? How would you improve her?
I think I'd put more stank in her voice.
What do you mean?
From time to time, she's really refined.
Yeah.
She's had lots of training, lots of practice from obviously very high level people for making you dynamic on camera. I don't know this for sure, but because she doesn't evoke the voice of the warrior as often as almost ever. And we talked about this last time. I break down vocal tonality into 3 basic voices for simplicity's sake: the lover, the teacher, and the warrior.
Right.
She's got the lover where she gets soft. She gets whispery, not whispery in her case, but soft and inviting. And she's got the teacher, which is very trumpety, front of the room, bop, 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 bop. This is what's happening. This is what we're doing. This is what you get. You get a new car, right? But she doesn't have the warrior, which is resolute. The warrior is immovable. And that usually shows up as, a little growl. a little mud, a little kind of like how I just was talking about how you walk people through. Yeah. There's not a lot more to do with her. Honestly, she's really refined. I'd say, one of the most refined in the world, but she does leave that money on the table. She could take us down into that, that sort of, she could tap into that part of us by getting that sort of, just hinting at, in her case, that sort of the dark side of things. Yeah.
What I would do with her is I would more develop her art of teaching. She's a very good teacher. She has a lot of women that follow her, right? But in terms of really setting up a structure, in terms of not only knowing like what she believes, explaining it, telling a story about it, and then future pacing her audience into what would happen once they do it, I could really see that being more something I'd want to develop about her. Because what she does is she's a lot more of a connector. You don't really understand it. She's one of those people you walk away and somebody asks you, what does Oprah stand for? What does she really believe?
Yeah, that's true. You don't really know.
Because she's made you feel like she believes whatever you believe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So here's the main thing with her, I would say at this point, is that you get to a certain point where I understand a lot of it is corporate jurisprudence. It's a lot of it is you got to be all things to all people from corporate and everything like that. But she's reached a pinnacle and a certain height where you can still teach. You can still take somebody and say, this is what I believe, and then explain it to them and then lead them through those steps.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things that make her successful, she has never pinpointed in public, this is how I did it. You understand? So a lot of it is just like she is that girlfriend. She is in the crowd. She nurtures. She warms you up.
Right. Yeah. That's her product.
Right.
Yeah.
So that sense, it's what I help people to understand. Now in 2020, you got to stand for something.
Yeah.
You can't have a direction, but at the same time, you have to know how to take someone from A to B. So I would really strengthen Oprah's teaching in a sense of more using her influence and then walking them through the influence steps. That's kind of what I would look at. What do you think?
I think that's great. It's looking at a whole different side of the equation than I was, but I think that's really cool. To me, that sounds like opening up a whole new sort of arena for her to operate in versus how she operates in it. Yeah. No, I think that's great, man.
If I'm going to get with you, Manny, we're talking 2.0.
Yeah.
You understand that? Because there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. There's a difference between being on TV and there's a difference between influence. And I want people to understand that.
Yeah.
You can get on and you can be like Oprah and be all things and touch all the hearts and all the minds. But you have to, you're trying to take it to another level.
Yeah. Yeah. And in her case, she's got to be asking, what's the next level for me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's profound accomplishment, that she's already experienced in her life. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
What about for Steve Jobs real quick? How would you improve Steve Jobs?
Oh, well, if I wasn't going to take him into a whole other arena like that, it's all about his voice for me. His body language is dialed. His voice is
his tonality is bad.
Yeah, his tonality was never great. Which is interesting because I think of it as a chain or steps. Body language, tonality, then words. And most people, most of the time, you need one in order to improve the other, in order to improve the other. And they act as three parts of a sort of seamless whole. He got away with not really being that powerful with his tonality. So that's what I would look at with him as well. Tonality is my secret favorite of the three sort of physical elements. Well, no, they're not physical, but out of body language, tonality, and words that you choose, storytelling, tonality is my secret favorite. So I'm always keyed in on how these really sort of successful and potent and charismatic people are with that. Now, before we start another topic, I do have to get going. We are at time, but we're not through the list yet. So we're going to have to do this yet again.
No doubt.
All right.
It was perfect, as usual.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you so much. And let's say this publicly. We're gonna schedule the next one today. We'll get it on the books today for people. All right.
We'll do.
All right, my man.
See you, my buddy.
Thank you.
Later, brother.